This video is long overdue. Back in the summer of 2017, I released a poorly made and very poorly justified video reviewing Best of Both Worlds in a CinemaSin style. It was vicious and definitely went too far, to the point of outright insulting one of the voice actors, who thanked me later? What little 14-year-old me didn't realize back then was that the CinemaSin style was not exactly the best review style to emulate, and emotionally driven or comedic arguments should not override logic, which is why it rightfully had by far the most polarizing reaction of any of my videos, and I took it down last year in a mere vain attempt to regain my own sense of dignity. But I digress. I've wanted to make this video for a while, gathering up all the evidence I can to support my argument this time, because while many of the points in this video are emotionally driven, I still want to make more logistic points. So without further ado, here is why I personally have low expectations for the Eddsworld fan movie. Not that I'm going and wanting to hate it. That's stupid.
Number 1. Best of Both Worlds sucks.
The other minisodes were fine, harmless, serviceable, inoffensive. Occasionally one would make me laugh for a few seconds, but this?
Hey guys, she's got the same tickle spot as me!
Yeah, the minisodes before were okay, but this is their longest and most story-driven one. This is the most I have to go off in terms of the way the actual movie turns out story-wise, which is why this little re-review of Best of Both Worlds will likely take up much of this video. It's also good to keep in mind that although I'm changing my approach, by and large my opinions on this minisode have not changed. In fact, every time I watch this, I find something new wrong with it. But let me start with what's good about it. After all, Vicky Gold saw something in this.
What I like about Best of Both Worlds:
the acting. I like these voice actors. I think they were all good choices, and even when the impression wasn't perfect, I'm sorry, James Horsley, they still got their character across very well, even if their character is out of character. The neighbor girls. Well, not the way the characters were handled, but I really like their designs. It isn't the first thing I'd think of, but it really works. Also, Alana, very attractive. I appreciate that artist. Tom and Tamara's subplot. I wish I saw more of Tom and Tam in this episode, because they are the best part of it. They act exactly like you'd think they would. There was only 1 or 2 moments I didn't like with them, and it's honestly not any fault of the way the characters are written. It's more about the comedy, and I'll get to that later. But it's too bad this subplot was outshined by the likes of
self-sus couple and tickle fetish.
If there's one word I could use to describe this minisode, it would be uncomfortable. For example, let's take a look at probably some of the most controversial scenes in the whole minisode. This.
Stop tickling me!
Never!
Just why? I remember a bit of drama on Tumblr a while back about whether or not this was a fetish thing, which is unfortunately the only logical conclusion I can draw here.
Matilda is one of the most adorable things ever conceived in the entire show.
One of the most adorable things ever conceived in the entire show.
Well, you tell me why it would be here with this uncomfortable air to it. Just think about it. Matt loves himself. He's arrogant and vain and narcissistic. He canonically made a porno where he did it with a clone of himself. All he and Matilda do in this minisode is go shopping and get a makeover. Matilda makes Matt look exactly like her for no reason, like they're the same person. It's completely unnecessary. And the tickling. Something tells me this is a euphemism for something. Well, do you have a better explanation? But I haven't even mentioned the elephant in the room. Sorry, I mean the self-cessed couple in the room. First of all, I'd call this fan service, and egregious fan service at that, but are there really tons of fans who like the idea of this ship? Did I miss something, or did a writer accidentally copy-paste their self-cessed fanfiction into the script? Actually, that would explain a lot. Like a scary amount. Second of all, Vicky Gold agreed to this. Think about that. Third, this doesn't actually make sense in terms of their character in the context of the gender swap. This isn't a Mickey and Minnie Mouse situation. This is interaction between 2 essentially identical Eds from near identical universes.
Why couldn't we see them going into the mirror to meet the girls? Imagine the kind of interactions you could get from seeing Matt and Matilda or Tom and Tamara together. That's one of the big reasons why we did Best of Both Worlds, because I thought the idea of Ed, Matt, and Tom meeting their female counterparts had a lot of potential.
Believe it or not, Mark, there's actually a pretty damn good reason why in Mirror Mirror none of the characters ever fully leave their respective universes. They're the same goddamn characters. Sure, there are slight differences between the 2 universes, but they're by and large the same. So Elle's feelings and opinions and morals being completely different from Ed's doesn't actually make sense. Like, Ella's written as some anime girl type, irrational, hopeless romantic kind of lunatic.
Oh no! Would you look at that? I guess you have no choice but to stay here.
But Ed is written as the straight man because the writers realized they needed conflict, but didn't realize they were supposed to be the same character. Like, Tom and Tam are written as the same character, and Matt and Matilda are written as the same character, but Elle goes through this arc where she sort of learns a weird, incredibly situational and confusing lesson, sort of. Like, Ed tells her, dude, I'm not gonna act like a heterosexual Matt because that doesn't fall in line with my character. And Elle's like, fine, Baka. But then this happens. Well, I guess they ended up feeling the same way in the end and kind of became the same character in the end, kinda. Like, Ed is just, oh, golly gee, I'm suddenly and inexplicably in love with her now. I'm gonna do this. And then Elle's like, what? Furthermore, isn't it Matt's job to be in love with himself? Wouldn't it make more sense and possibly be funny if Matt and Matilda had this dramatic love story as their plot instead of that? While the others just decided to hang out casually as friends? Sure, it may push the Gingers in the limelight more, and it is Eddsworld, but it would not be hard to change the length of the romance plot, and changing these details around would make much more sense and fit with the surreal comedy of the show. Speaking of which...
Comedy gold. As hard to find as actual gold.
Okay, so the dialogue. It's pretty bad. The quality ranges from lines that are just fine, maybe a little forced, but fine,
Wow, I've never been to a mall this close to my house before.
to just the most inane things that no human would ever say.
So, you're really us from another world?
No, we definitely didn't just teleport through a mirror at all.
I guess some of the jokes are alright. I didn't laugh at a single one, but they have punchlines, I guess, for the most part. There are a ton of jokes that really flop on their own, though. Like, where the characters just kind of explain the joke and, like, their motivations and, like, how they feel about other characters.
Oh, what's the matter? Did we hurt your little feelings?
Joan, leave the insults to me.
Sorry.
Just a small little side note, as a huge fan of Hammer and Fail, the reason this was funny then isn't just because John is a butt monkey and we needed Eduardo to be mad at him for no reason. It was because he was saying harmless but confused things where he inadvertently makes Eduardo seem pathetic, and then Eduardo overreacts to it in a comedic and overdramatic way because he is pathetic.
She said haunted houses were stupid and that you guys are stupid.
I thought she said we were stupid.
I'm gonna punch you in the face.
This is just a Heather scenario. And honestly, Heather's isn't really that funny.
Shut up, Heather! Sorry, Heather.
In fact, while I like the character design for the neighbor girls, they act much more like popular bully stereotypes in this, and that's not only more unfunny, but also seems lazy. But the real problem with the comedy here is the execution and the timing. Eddsworld doesn't do slow comedy unless it's for a particularly funny, purposefully awkward punchline, but having the same slow pace for every joke does not work. Although, I don't know if the slow nature is even meant to be funny, because every line of dialogue was spoken incredibly slowly, like we're in an episode of Dora the Explorer. Do you see the tickle fetish? There it is! Excelente! Aries numero uno! There are two comedic stylings in the best episodes. Before the Legacy, Ed's style was much more normally paced, like real life, with a few slower and faster jokes thrown in. The similarities to how normal conversations and reactions are paced makes the surreality of it all the funnier. Meanwhile, the Legacy, being directed by Mr. Astiff Movie himself, is very fast-paced, and that not only makes the ridiculous jokes funnier, but the weaker jokes don't linger for too long. Both styles have advantages and disadvantages, but they both work in their own ways. With this, it's so boring and drones on and on and on, and it's with lines that by themselves are not funny enough to hold their own. This minisode could be less than 10 minutes if the actors just talked a little faster. I think this was an intentional move because every single actor talks like this, and these actors clearly have charisma. It seems more of a direction problem than an acting problem.
Why don't I just throw the glowing Eat this! Abracadabra!
Matilda, you still have that mirror?
Mm-hmm.
Matilda, you know what happened last time. And besides, you have enough to fill a museum if you wanted to.
But while this pacing is hard to stomach, it's even worse when added on top of
Pointless references.
In this minisode, the writers seemed to either run out of original jokes or really wanted to suck up to the fans, because a few of the jokes and lines are taken directly from previous episodes, and there is no new spin on it. You'd think these would be funny here too, but not only does the pacing and lack of good timing make them less funny, but sometimes the context does too.
Sick burn.
Why would Tam be startled by this? Tam and Tom are the same person. They should both be able to do this. In fact, wouldn't it be funnier to make them both do this? Like they both reach off screen and high-five each other that way or something in that vein?
Maybe we can spend some time together while we're here.
Hey, I have a policy. Dinner and a movie first.
Okay. Yes. That was in Matt Sucks. What's the joke? It's not funny if it's just a reference. 'Cause like, you know, that joke actually had a punchline in that. Is it just like to emphasize the fact that Ella's creepy?
Oh no! Would you look at that?
I guess you have no choice but to stay.
Also, there's one more referential line that really bothers me. Usually I don't care about continuity in Eddsworld. Like, I really, really don't care about continuity. But in this case, it's very noticeable. You see, this version of Eddsworld basically takes place in the world where the end didn't happen. And this makes sense as both John and Joan are alive. Except for in this exchange.
So wait, you did what to the guy?
I called him a commie, and I shot him with a harpoon.
What? If this is a reference to the end, John shouldn't be alive, and I guess Tam hasn't experienced the end in her universe. Well, in that case, Joan being alive would kind of make sense, I guess. I don't even know. But if this is a reference, Tom got the line wrong. He didn't call Tor a commie in the episode. If this isn't a reference to the end, I guess that would make more sense, but it's still kind of alarming that Tom potentially killed a probable communist for no specified reason. It's not even funny. Violence itself is not a joke. Violence can help the comedy, but by itself it generally won't make someone laugh. That's why Family Guy sucks. I don't know why this line would be in here. It aids literally nothing in the story, and Tom could easily just tell one of those useless scene transition sort of jokes instead of doing this. You know, like this one.
And the guy said, "That's not my lawnmower. That's my wife."
I had such a good time at the convenience store with you, Ed.
And did Elle and did Ed and Elle just spend like all day at the convenience store? And imagine what interactions they'd have there. Just look at how slow this goddamn climax is. It's
I've got a bone to pick with you.
Don't touch him.
like, yeah, you go, Elle. Don't touch my senpai. Just look at how Alana's just like, I'm just gonna hold my fist up. This is the funniest part of the entire minisode. It's just... Why did Alana go into the Eduardo's just for that joke? That's not like, why would you just go through anywhere? Why do we even have... Why does John have a pig?
Stop tickling me!
Never!
I mean, I'd say like that almost acts as like some kind of like tickle, like sexual predator. But considering we have like Elle here, who's just like, uh-oh, I broke the mirror. I guess you're gonna have to stay with me. Okay, now I talked about the minisode. I'd find more to talk about, but I really don't want to watch the minisode more than the few times I did to make this review segment. But what else could be wrong with the film, besides literally everything that went wrong in Best of Both Worlds? Well, Mark Lavallo is a pretty important aspect of the Eddsworld fan movie now, isn't he? He was the original director and went over the channel, and he was part of the writing team of every minisode, as well as being an important writer for the movie. And he seems like a nice enough person. I'm sure he'd be an interesting guy to talk to, even if I don't like some of his work. But when it comes to his thoughts on Eddsworld, there's something in the back of my mind, just a little voice in my subconscious that says to me, this guy doesn't get it. And there's no better place to illustrate that point than in his review series, Eddsworld Recap. I haven't seen all these reviews because I stopped caring a ton after seeing a portion of these videos, but What stands out to me the most is how seriously Mark takes some of this. And yes, you may shout hypocrite at me because I've overanalyzed a lot of Eddsworld before. I do put a lot more faith than I should in the creator sometimes. And you may call me a simple hater because he's bashed some of the episodes that made it on my top 10 list. I love Power Ends Lunatics, I'll admit it, they're among my favorite episodes, but they're definitely not perfect. But the problem here is that he takes this silly, ridiculous webtoon way too seriously, even by my standards. I took Power Ed seriously too, but I also acknowledge the fact that it is a comedy and the humor matters much more than the story, and honestly, a lot of the reasons why I took it so seriously at some points is due to personal emotional connections I had to some of the events that occur in the story, something I acknowledged in a video a while back. But Mark apparently really likes to focus on the most nitpicky details. Details like a subjective 5-second cutaway gag that has almost no impact on the actual episode, unlike botching up the hilarity of the interactions with the neighbors and boiling them down to high school bully tropes. Like, as much as he criticizes the legacy, he seems really blind to his own work. The only time I think nearly every criticism in one of these videos is justified is in the Eddsworld Recap for the end, which was an episode I also reviewed in a similar way, because that one actually took itself seriously and focused more on plot, and the plot kind of fell apart. Other than that, with everyone I saw, I started to recite what my negative comments told me. It's just a webtoon. It's not grand or important, and that's okay. Hell, most of the best episodes focus solely on comedy, and arguably the worst episode focused too much on being serious. And the reason why I'm putting so much emphasis on this is because I'm afraid these opinions and criticisms could heavily impact the overall product of the Eddsworld fan movie. It could end up being a dull experience like the end and take itself way too seriously and think it's way more important than it actually is, and that's not what most rational fans go to Eddsworld to see, surprisingly. Also, Mark really likes to complain about the fact that there are modern references in a quote-unquote timeless show. Everything about Eddsworld is a product of its time. I haven't seen all the Eddsworld recaps, but I just imagine him looking at Zombie Attack 2005 and he's just like, ah yes, very timeless. But who knows, because Mark is no longer fully in charge of the final product, at least I think so. It could turn out completely different from that. But speaking of Mark, there's one final thing that could be the possible nail in the coffin for this movie. For those who don't know, Mark Lavallo backed out of directing the movie a while ago. John Lopez has taken over direction, and apparently some changes are being made to the script as well to make it quote-unquote more like Eddsworld? Oh no. Oh god, no. Oh no. They're pulling a Justice League! Remember that movie, the DCEU disaster? Because of a tragedy in his life, the original director Zack Snyder had to leave the project. So a new director and a bunch of corporate hacks came in and changed the whole tone of the movie halfway through making it. Like, after they shot the film, making reshoots and bringing a handful of more bad decisions along with it. The result is a movie no one could enjoy. And I'm afraid this could happen to the Eddsworld fan movie, even if Mark could have very well been the wrong choice for the film. You can't leave with a movie that changes its vision this far through, especially 5 years into a project that's already been storyboarded. Just why? So yeah, my anger has been released, but hopefully with better arguments backing it up. I'm glad people are excited for this film, but I'm just really hesitant. I don't expect to enjoy it, but let me make one thing clear. I want to enjoy it. What I want for this movie is for the crew to blow my low expectations out of the water, and not in the Dear Starboy way where it was worse than I expected. I want this to be the Eddsworld adventure I've been looking for, a satisfying, hilarious extravaganza. And when the movie is finally released, I may not expect it, but I hope it'll be better than what the crew's made in the past. But if it's not, I'm sure I could at least get an interesting review out of it.